The stars in the Kepler 442 system looked cold and distant as Ambassador Cathara stared out from the bridge of her ship. The Star Whisper was not a war vessel. It was built for peace talks and diplomatic missions, with smooth white walls and gentle curves that spoke of the Zephyrian way of life. Everything about her people was soft and peaceful, from their pale blue skin to their quiet voices. Cathara had spent 3 long months trying to make peace with the Corvan Federation. The talks had failed badly. The Corvans wanted war, not peace. They called the Zephyrians weak and useless. Now she was taking her small convoy of 5 ships back home to deliver the bad news to her government. The journey should have been safe. This part of space was supposed to be neutral territory. No, one was supposed to attack diplomatic ships here. But as Cathara watched the stars, she knew something was wrong. Her ship's sensors were picking up movement in the darkness ahead. "Ambassador," said Captain Yilnith from his seat at the ship's controls. His voice was shaking. "We have 12 ships coming toward us. They are moving fast." Cathara felt her heart sink. 12 ships was far too many to be a normal patrol. She moved to stand behind the captain's chair and looked at the screen showing the approaching vessels. The ships were dark and angular, built for hunting and killing. She recognized them immediately. "Vorthons," she whispered. The Vorthons were everything the Zephyrians were not. Where her people sought peace, the Vorthons brought war. Where her people built beautiful things, the Vorthons made weapons. They were tall and strong, with gray skin like stone and red eyes that burned with anger. They had been conquering worlds for over a century, turning peaceful planets into slave colonies, or burning them to ash. "Send a message to the escort ships," Cathara ordered. "Tell them to prepare for—" Her words were cut off as the space around the convoy suddenly filled with light. Bright red beams shot out from the Vorthon ships, striking the Zephyrian vessels. The energy weapons hit their shields with tremendous force. The Star Whisper shook like a leaf in a storm. "Shields are failing," Captain Yilnith called out. "We cannot take much more of this." One of the escort ships, the Moonbeam, was already in trouble. Smoke was pouring from its engines, and it was drifting helplessly through space. The other escort ships were firing back with their small defensive weapons, but their shots barely scratched the Vorthon hull armor. A new voice filled the bridge, coming through the communication system. It was deep and harsh, speaking in the common galactic language with a thick Vorthon accent. "This is Captain Vexthor of the Hunter Fleet Bloodfang. Zephyrian ships, you will surrender immediately. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. Resist and we will destroy you all." Cathara looked at her captain. Yilnith was a good officer, but he was not a warrior. None of them were warriors. The Zephyrians had not fought a real war in over 300 years. They had almost forgotten how to fight. "What are our options?" she asked quietly. "We have none," Yilnith replied. His voice was full of defeat. "Their ships are too strong. Our weapons are too weak. If we try to run, they will catch us. If we try to fight, they will kill us." Another escort ship, the Gentle Rain, exploded in a ball of fire and metal. The crew had been trying to use their ship as a shield to protect the others. Now they were dead, turned to atoms in the cold of space. "Send out a distress call," Cathara ordered. "All frequencies, emergency priority." "Already done, Ambassador," said the communications officer. "But the nearest friendly fleet is 6 hours away. The Galactic Patrol is even further. No one can reach us in time." Cathara closed her eyes and tried to think. Her people had always believed that reason and diplomacy could solve any problem. They had always believed that if you were peaceful and kind, others would be peaceful and kind in return. But the Vorthons did not care about peace or kindness. They only understood strength and fear. The Vorthon ships were moving closer now, surrounding the convoy like wolves around a wounded deer. Cathara could see the details of their hulls through the bridge windows. They were covered in scars from old battles and painted with symbols that meant death and conquest. "Zephyrian ships," Captain Vexthor's voice came again. "You have 30 seconds to surrender. After that, my hunters will take your ships by force. Your people will become slaves. Your worlds will burn. This is your only warning." "Ambassador," whispered Captain Yilnith. What do we do? Cathara felt the weight of decision crushing down on her. If she surrendered, her people would be enslaved. If she fought, they would all die. Either way, the Vorthan Empire would learn about Zephyrian space routes and colony locations. Either way, her homeworld would be in danger. She was about to give the order to surrender when the sensor officer suddenly called out, "Contact! New ship approaching from the outer system." Everyone on the bridge turned to look at the sensor display. A single ship was racing toward them at incredible speed. It was much smaller than the Vorthan hunters, but it was moving faster than anything they had ever seen. "Can you identify it?" Cathara asked. The sensor officer worked at his controls for a moment. "The energy signature is strange. The ship design is unknown." "Wait," he paused, checking his readings again. "Ambassador, I think it might be human." A human ship. Cathara had heard stories about the humans, but she had never seen one of their vessels before. They were a new species in the galaxy, having only achieved faster than light travel about 50 years ago. Most people said they were primitive and violent, coming from a world so dangerous that it had tried to kill them for millions of years. But what could one small human ship do against 12 Vorthan hunters? The human ship came out of the darkness like a bullet. It was not beautiful like Zephyrian vessels or scary like Vorthan hunters. It looked like a working ship, built for carrying cargo from one place to another. The hull was gray metal with patches where repairs had been made. Long scratches and burn marks showed it had seen hard use. Captain Vexthor watched the approaching vessel from his command chair aboard the Bloodfang. His red eyes narrowed as he studied the readings his officers gave him. The ship was called Iron Wolf according to its identification signal. It was registered to Earth, the human homeworld. "A human cargo ship," Vexthor said with a laugh that sounded like grinding stone. "One small freighter thinks it can challenge the Bloodfang fleet." His officers laughed too. The Vorthans had heard stories about humans, but they were not impressed. Humans were young and weak compared to the great races of the galaxy. They had only left their homeworld recently. What could they possibly know about real warfare? "Shall we destroy it now, Captain?" asked the weapons officer. "Not yet," Vexthor replied. "Let us see what this human wants. Perhaps it wishes to beg for scraps from our hunt." On the Star Whisper, Ambassador Cathara watched the human ship with growing hope and fear. Hope because any help was better than no help. Fear because she did not want more innocent beings to die for her people. "The human ship is hailing us," reported the communications officer. "Put it through," Cathara ordered. A new voice filled the bridge. It was calm and steady, speaking common galactic with a strange accent that made some words sound hard and sharp. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the independent vessel Iron Wolf, Zephyrian convoy. Are you in need of assistance?" Cathara stepped forward to answer. "Captain Morrison, this is Ambassador Cathara. We are under attack by Vorthan forces. Please do not risk your ship for us. You should leave this area immediately." There was a pause. Then the human captain spoke again, and there was something in his voice that made Cathara shiver. It was not fear or anger, it was something colder. "Understood, Ambassador, I see the situation. Give me a moment to talk to these Vorthans." Before Cathara could respond, the communication channel switched. Now Captain Morrison was speaking to the entire area, his voice reaching every ship in the system. "Vorthan vessels, this is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth. You are attacking a peaceful diplomatic convoy in neutral space. This is against galactic law. I am ordering you to cease fire and withdraw immediately." The bridge of the Bloodfang fell silent. Then Captain Vexthor began to laugh again, louder this time. "Ordering us?" he said into his communication system. "Human, you are in a cargo ship. We are 12 hunters. You will leave now or we will add your wreckage to the debris field." "I gave you a lawful order," Morrison replied, his voice still calm. "You have chosen to ignore it. That makes you pirates and criminals. Last chance to reconsider." Vexthor's laughter stopped. No one had ever spoken to him like this. Lesser races begged or ran when they saw his fleet. They did not give him orders. "You dare threaten me?" Vexthor snarled. "I am Captain Vexthor. I have conquered 12 worlds. I have burned cities and enslaved millions. What are you, human? What makes you think you can stand against the Bloodfang fleet?" The response came immediately, and it sent a chill through every being who heard it. "I am Jake Morrison, formerly of the Earth Defense Force, 7th Colonial Marines. I fought in the Titan Wars, the Europa Rebellion, and the Asteroid Belt Campaign. I have killed more enemies than you have conquered worlds. And right now, I am the only thing standing between you and a very bad day." On the Star Whisper, Ambassador Cathara felt her breath catch. She had heard whispers about human military forces. Stories said they came from a world so dangerous that everything on it tried to kill everything else. A world where the native creatures had to fight every day just to survive. But she had thought these were just stories. Captain Vexthor was no longer laughing. He had conquered many worlds, but he had never heard anyone speak with such quiet confidence. The human sounded like he was discussing the weather, not facing 12 warships. "You are one ship," Vexthor said, trying to regain his composure. "We are many. Simple mathematics, human." "You know what your problem is?" Morrison replied. "You think this is about numbers. It is not. This is about will. This is about who wants to win more. And trust me, Vorthon, you do not want this as much as I do." The Iron Wolf was closer now, and the Zephyrians could see it clearly through their windows. It did not look like much. Just a battered cargo ship with some extra equipment bolted to its hull. But something about the way it moved through space reminded Cathara of a hunting cat she had seen once in a nature documentary. Calm and patient, but ready to explode into violence. "This is your final warning," Morrison continued. "Release the Zephyrian ships and withdraw from this system. Do this now, and you can go home to tell your friends about the day you met a human, and live to talk about it." Vexthor's patience finally broke. "Destroy the human ship," he roared to his fleet. "Show this primitive what happens when someone challenges the Bloodfang." Two of the Vorthon hunters turned toward the Iron Wolf, their weapons charging with deadly light. Energy cannons that could punch through a battleship's armor swiveled to target the small cargo vessel. But something strange happened. The Iron Wolf did not try to run. It did not try to hide. Instead, it began to change. Panels along the ship's hull slid open, revealing weapons that definitely did not belong on a cargo freighter. The ship's engine signature suddenly spiked, showing power levels that should have been impossible for a vessel that size. "What is that?" whispered Captain Yilneth. Ambassador Cathara stared at the transforming ship and finally understood. "It is not a cargo ship," she said quietly. "It was never a cargo ship." Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication channel one last time, and now it carried the promise of violence. "You had your chance, Vorthon. Now you get to learn why smart species do not pick fights with humans." The Iron Wolf shed its disguise completely, revealing itself as a warship built for one purpose: killing other ships efficiently and without mercy. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Ambassador Cathara remembered an old saying from human culture that someone had once translated for her: "Never corner something meaner than you are." The first Vorthon hunter ship fired its main cannon at the Iron Wolf. The energy beam was bright enough to blind anyone looking directly at it. It was the kind of weapon that could crack a moon in half. The beam shot across space toward the human ship. But the Iron Wolf was not there anymore. Captain Jake Morrison had thrown his ship into a spinning dive the moment he saw the Vorthon weapon charging. The energy beam passed through empty space, where his ship had been a second before. The Iron Wolf twisted and rolled like a living thing, moving in ways that should have torn it apart. "Impossible," Captain Vexthor snarled from his command chair. "No cargo ship can move like that." He was right. No cargo ship could move like that. But the Iron Wolf was not a cargo ship anymore. The fake hull panels had fallen away, showing the real ship underneath. It was lean and deadly, built for speed and killing. Every line of its design spoke of one purpose: war. Morrison's voice came over the communication channel, still calm despite the battle that had just begun. You gentlemen seem to have trouble hitting a moving target. Let me show you how it is. Done. The Iron Wolf spun around and fired back. But these were not the slow energy beams the Vorthans used. These were railguns, shooting metal slugs at incredible speed. The projectiles moved so fast they were invisible, striking the Vorthan ship before anyone could react. The hunter ship's shields flared and died. The metal slugs punched through the hull like paper, tearing into the ship's vital systems. Explosions bloomed along the vessel's length as power conduits overloaded and weapon systems failed. On the Star Whisper, Ambassador Cathara watched in amazement. "How is he doing this?" she whispered. Captain Yilnath was studying his sensor readings with wide eyes. "The human ship is using kinetic weapons, solid projectiles instead of energy beams. Our databases say this is a very old form of warfare." "Old, but effective," Cathara replied, watching the damaged Vorthan ship drift helplessly through space. The other Vorthan hunters were spreading out now, trying to surround the Iron Wolf. But Morrison was not playing their game. Instead of staying in one place like a normal ship would, he was using the debris from the battle to his advantage. The wreckage of the destroyed Zephyrian escort ship Moonbeam was floating nearby in a cloud of twisted metal. Morrison dove straight into this debris field, disappearing among the wreckage like a shark hiding in coral. "Where did he go?" demanded Vexthor. "Find him." The Vorthan sensors were having trouble tracking the human ship among all the metal debris. Their targeting systems kept locking onto pieces of wreckage instead of the real target. This was exactly what Morrison had planned. The Iron Wolf appeared suddenly from behind a large piece of debris already firing. Another Vorthan hunter took a full salvo of railgun shots to its engine section. The ship's reactor went critical, creating a ball of nuclear fire that lit up the entire system. 2 Vorthan ships destroyed in less than 5 minutes. The remaining hunters were beginning to understand that they were not fighting a normal enemy. Captain Vexthor was screaming orders at his remaining ships. "Concentrate fire. Box him in. Use the gravity mines." The Vorthans launched special weapons called gravity mines. These created small areas of twisted space that would crush any ship that came too close. They spread the mines around the battle zone, trying to limit where the Iron Wolf could go. But Morrison had fought against gravity mines before. He knew how they worked and how to avoid them. More importantly, he knew how to use them. The Iron Wolf came racing out of the debris field, heading straight for one of the gravity mines. The Vorthans thought he had made a mistake. They thought he was going to be crushed by his own reckless flying. At the last second, Morrison fired a spread of missiles at the mine. The explosions triggered the gravity weapon, but instead of crushing the Iron Wolf, the twisted space caught a Vorthan hunter that had been chasing him. The enemy ship was pulled into the gravity field and compressed into a ball of metal no bigger than a car. "This is impossible," Vexthor roared. "He is fighting like a madman." On the Iron Wolf's bridge, Morrison smiled grimly as he worked his controls. This was not madness. This was exactly how humans fought when they had to. They used everything around them as a weapon. They turned their enemy's strength against them. They did not follow the rules of civilized warfare because sometimes being civilized meant dying. Another Vorthan ship tried to ram the Iron Wolf, hoping to destroy both vessels in the collision. Morrison waited until the last possible moment, then fired his engines at full power. The Iron Wolf shot forward just as the Vorthan ship passed through the space where he had been. But Morrison had left a present behind. A single missile, launched at point-blank range, struck the Vorthan ship's hull. The explosion broke the vessel's back, sending both halves spinning away into space. 4 Vorthan ships destroyed. 8 remaining, but the Iron Wolf was not undamaged. Energy beams had scorched its hull. One of its railguns was offline. The ship's shields were failing. Morrison opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian convoy. "Ambassador Cathara, I need you to do something for me." "Anything, Captain Morrison," she replied immediately. "I need you to trust me, and I need your people to be ready to fight." Ambassador Cathara felt her heart sink. "Captain, my people are not warriors. We do not know how to fight. You are about to learn," Morrison said grimly, "because the only way we all get out of this alive is if we work together. And I am going to teach you something the Vorthans do not understand. What is that? Desperate people are the most dangerous people in the galaxy. And right now, we are all very desperate. The Iron Wolf spun around and fired everything it had at the nearest Vorthan ship. Railguns, missiles, and energy weapons lit up space with deadly light. The Vorthan hunter exploded in a cascade of fire. 5 down, 7 to go. But Morrison was not done yet. He had one more trick to show the Vorthans, something that would teach them why humans were feared by those who knew them. He was going to show them what happened when you cornered something that had evolved to fight for its life every single day. All Vorthan ships, Morrison broadcast on all frequencies. You want to know what makes humans special? We do not know how to quit. We do not know how to surrender. And we definitely do not know how to lose. The Iron Wolf dove toward the center of the Vorthan formation, all weapons firing, ready to take as many enemies with it as possible. The real battle was just beginning. The Iron Wolf raced through the middle of the Vorthan formation with every weapon firing. Energy beams and railgun shots filled the space around it. Morrison was not trying to escape anymore. He was hunting. Another Vorthan ship tried to get behind him. But Morrison had anticipated this. He cut his engines and let momentum carry him forward while spinning his ship around. Now he was flying backward but still shooting forward. The surprised Vorthon pilot flew straight into Morrison's line of fire. The enemy ship's bridge exploded under the railgun barrage. Without anyone to pilot it, the vessel drifted helplessly through space, its crew dead or dying. 6 Vorthan ships destroyed. 6 remaining. Captain Vexthor was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. This human was not just lucky or reckless. He was a professional killer who knew exactly what he was doing. Every move was calculated. Every shot was placed with precision. All ships fall back and regroup, Vexthor ordered. Do not engage the human alone. But Morrison was not going to let them regroup. He opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian convoy, while dodging another volley of enemy fire. Ambassador Kithara, are you listening? Yes, Captain Morrison, came the reply from the Star Whisper. Good. I need you to do exactly what I tell you. Your ship still has power, right? Some power, yes, but our weapons are mostly offline. Forget the weapons, Morrison said as he rolled his ship under a Vorthan energy beam. We are going to turn your ship into something better than a weapon. Ambassador Kithara felt confused. I do not understand. Your ship has a reactor, correct? And you can overload it? Captain Yilnith spoke up from his position at the controls. Yes, but that would destroy the ship, and us with it. Not if you do it right, Morrison replied. Listen carefully. I am going to guide you through something called a controlled reactor breach. You are going to turn your ship into a bomb. The Zephyrian bridge fell silent. Ambassador Kithara felt her heart racing. Captain Morrison, we are not warriors. We cannot do this. Yes, you can, Morrison said firmly. Because you are not doing this as warriors. You are doing this as people who want to go home. People who want to see their families again. People who refuse to let bullies win. While he spoke, Morrison was still fighting. The Iron Wolf twisted between 2 Vorthan ships, firing at both of them simultaneously. One ship lost its main gun, the other lost its engine. Here is what you do, Morrison continued, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. Yilnith, reroute all power to your main reactor. When I give the signal, shut down the containment field for exactly 3 seconds, then bring it back online. That will create a massive energy pulse, Yilnith said, understanding beginning to dawn on him. Exactly. Aim that pulse at the nearest Vorthan ship. The energy wave will fry their electronics and leave them helpless. Ambassador Kithara looked around her bridge at her crew. They were all looking back at her, waiting for her decision. These were not soldiers. They were diplomats and scientists and engineers. But they were also people who had families to protect. Do it, she ordered. Meanwhile, Morrison was putting on a display of flying that defied belief. He was using the gravity of nearby asteroids to slingshot his ship in impossible directions. He was using the exhaust from his own engines to blind enemy sensors. He was even using pieces of destroyed ships as shields. The Vorthons had never seen anything like it. They were trained to fight other civilized species who followed predictable patterns of warfare. But humans did not follow patterns. They adapted constantly, using anything and everything as a weapon. "Now, Ambassador," Morrison called out. On the Star Whisper, Captain Yilnith shut down the reactor containment field. Energy poured out of the ship in a brilliant wave of light. The pulse struck a nearby Vorthon hunter, overloading every electronic system on board. The enemy ship went dark, drifting helplessly through space. "It worked," Cathara gasped. "Good job," Morrison replied. "Now do it again. Target the ship on your left." As the Zephyrians prepared for another energy pulse, Morrison was dealing with his own problems. The remaining Vorthon ships were trying to box him in, using coordinated attacks to limit his movement. But Morrison had one more surprise for them. He began broadcasting on all Vorthon frequencies, filling their communication channels with noise. But it was not random noise. It was human music. Specifically, it was the war songs that human soldiers had sung for thousands of years. The effect on the Vorthons was immediate and terrifying. The music was wild and primal, full of drums and shouting voices. It spoke of battles fought in dark, places of warriors who would rather die than surrender. It was the sound of a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on a world that tried to kill everything. Captain Vexthor tried to shut off his communication system, but Morrison had jammed the controls. The human war songs filled the bridge of every Vorthon ship, getting into the minds of warriors who had thought they knew what fear was. "What is this noise?" demanded one of Vexthor's officers. "It is psychological warfare," Vexthor replied, but his voice was shaking. "The human is trying to break our spirits." And it was working. The Vorthon pilots were making mistakes, hesitating at crucial moments. The music was reminding them of every story they had ever heard about humans. Stories about a species that came from a death world. Stories about creatures that fought their own planet for millions of years and won. Morrison used their confusion to his advantage. The Iron Wolf struck like lightning, destroying another crippled Vorthon ship with a perfectly placed missile strike. 7 ships destroyed. 5 remaining. The Star Whisper fired another energy pulse, disabling a second Vorthon hunter. Now there were only 4 enemy ships left that could still fight. "Captain Morrison," Ambassador Cathara called over the communication system. "What do we do now?" Morrison's reply was grim, but determined. "Now we finish this, and we make sure the survivors remember what happens when you attack peaceful people." The Iron Wolf turned toward the remaining Vorthon ships, all weapons ready. But Morrison was not done teaching lessons yet. He was about to show them the most important thing about humans. They never gave up. No matter how bad things looked, no matter how many enemies they faced, humans kept fighting until the very end. And sometimes, just sometimes, that was enough to win. The final phase of the battle was about to begin. The 4 remaining Vorthon ships pulled back to form a defensive line. Captain Vexthor was no longer thinking about conquest or glory. He was thinking about survival. Half of his fleet was destroyed or disabled by a single human and some peaceful aliens who had learned to fight in the space of minutes. "All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel," Vexthor ordered. "Ignore the Zephyrians, the human is the real threat." But Morrison was not going to make it easy for them. The Iron Wolf was darting between the disabled Vorthon ships, using them as cover. Every time the enemy tried to get a clear shot, Morrison would duck behind another piece of wreckage. "You cannot hide forever, human," Vexthor broadcast on all frequencies. Morrison's reply came back immediately, and there was something like laughter in his voice. "Who says I am hiding? I am hunting." The Iron Wolf suddenly shot out from behind a drifting Vorthon hulk, all weapons firing. But instead of targeting the ships, Morrison was aiming at something else. His railgun struck the reactor of one of the disabled Vorthon vessels. The explosion was enormous. The chain reaction tore through the ship's hull and spread to 2 other nearby wrecks. In seconds, the space between the Iron Wolf and the remaining Vorthon ships was filled with expanding balls of nuclear fire. When the light faded, Morrison was gone again. But now the Vorthons were blind, their sensors overloaded by the radiation from the explosions. "Where is he?" Vexthor demanded. The answer came in the form of missiles striking his ship from below. Morrison had used the explosion as cover to get underneath the Vorthan formation. Now he was attacking from an angle they had not expected. The Bloodfang shuddered under the impact, but its heavy armor held. Vexthor smiled grimly. His flagship was the strongest ship in the fleet. It would take more than a few missiles to destroy it, but Morrison was not trying to destroy the Bloodfang yet. He had other plans. Ambassador Kethera, Morrison called over the communication system. I need you to do one more thing for me. What is it, Captain? Came the reply from the Star Whisper. Take your ship and ram the Vorthan vessel on the right. Full speed. There was silence on the communication channel. Then Ambassador Kethera spoke, her voice steady despite the fear she must have been feeling. Captain Morrison, that will destroy our ship. We will all die. No, you will not, Morrison replied. Trust me. I have a plan. Captain Yilnith spoke up from his position at the controls. Ambassador, our ship is not built for ramming attacks. We are not warriors. Today you are, Morrison said firmly. Today you are people who refuse to be victims. Today you are heroes. Ambassador. Kethera looked around her bridge one more time. Her crew was looking back at her with fear and determination in their eyes. They were diplomats and scientists, but they were also people who wanted to go home. Do it, she ordered. The Star Whisper turned toward the nearest Vorthan ship and began to accelerate. The enemy vessel saw them coming and tried to move away, but it was too damaged to maneuver quickly. Just before the collision, Morrison struck. The Iron Wolf appeared from nowhere, firing everything it had at the space between the two ships. The explosion threw both vessels off course, but the Star Whisper still struck the Vorthan ship a glancing blow. The impact tore through both hulls, but Morrison had calculated it perfectly. The Zephyrian ship was damaged, but not destroyed. The Gari Vorthan ship was not so lucky. The collision had ruptured its main reactor. The enemy vessel exploded in a ball of fire, taking another ship with it. 2 more Vorthan ships destroyed. Only 2 left. But Captain Vexthor was not finished yet. Seeing his fleet destroyed around him had driven him into a rage. The Bloodfang turned toward the damaged Star Whisper, preparing to ram the Zephyrian ship and destroy it completely. If I am going to die, Vexthor snarled, I will take some of you with me. The massive Vorthan flagship accelerated toward the helpless Zephyrian vessel. Ambassador Kethera watched death approaching through her bridge windows and felt strangely calm. She had done her duty. She had fought back against the bullies. But Morrison was not going to let her die. The Iron Wolf threw itself between the 2 ships, taking the full force of the collision. The impact nearly tore the human vessel in half, but Morrison had one last surprise. As the ships crashed together, he triggered every explosive device on his ship. The combined explosion destroyed both the Iron Wolf and the Bloodfang in a burst of light that could be seen from 3 star systems away. Captain Vexthor and his flagship were gone, turned to atoms in the cold of space. Ambassador Kethera stared at the expanding cloud of debris where the brave human had sacrificed himself to save her people. Tears ran down her face as she realized that Jake Morrison was dead. But then her communication officer called out in excitement. Ambassador, I am receiving a signal. From where? She asked. From an escape pod. Someone survived the explosion. A small pod was drifting away from the wreckage, its emergency beacon flashing. Ambassador Kethera smiled through her tears as Morrison's voice came over the communication system. This is Captain Morrison. Sorry about the fireworks, but that seemed like the best way to deal with the situation. Anyone need a ride home? The last 2 Vorthan ships, seeing their commander dead and their fleet destroyed, turned and fled into deep space. They would carry word of this battle back to their empire. They would tell stories about the day a single human and some peaceful aliens destroyed an entire hunter fleet. As rescue ships arrived to help the survivors, Ambassador Kethera spoke privately with Morrison over a secure channel. Captain, how can we ever thank you? She asked. You do not need to thank me, Morrison replied. You just need to remember something. Bullies only win when good people do nothing. Today you proved that even peaceful people can fight when they have to. Will we see you again? Kethera asked. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Maybe. The galaxy is a big place, but it is also getting smaller. Humans are spreading out, exploring new worlds, meeting new people. Some of us are traders, some are explorers, and some of us are people like me. What kind of person are you, Captain Morrison? I am the kind of person who shows up when someone calls for help. I am the kind of person who believes that bullies should not be allowed to win. And I am the kind of person who will always answer a distress call no matter how dangerous it might be. Morrison paused, then continued. Tell your people something for me, Ambassador. Tell them that humans do not abandon their friends. Tell them that if they ever need help again, all they have to do is call. We will come. As the rescue fleet escorted the survivors to safety, word of the battle began to spread throughout the galaxy. The story grew with each telling, but the basic facts remained the same. A single human had appeared when peaceful aliens were in danger. He had fought impossible, odds and won. He had taught the victims to fight back against their oppressors. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, other humans were listening to the story and nodding in approval. The galaxy was about to learn what Earth had known for millions of years. Never pick a fight with something that evolved to survive on a death world. And never, ever threaten someone a human has decided to protect. The message had been sent. The response was coming. Daniel Wright rubbed his tired eyes and reached for his third cup of coffee. The night shift at Europa Monitoring Station was always quiet, but tonight seemed especially so. The gentle hum of equipment and occasional beep from the life support systems were his only companions. Outside the reinforced windows, Jupiter loomed large in the black sky, its swirling storms visible even from this distance. 4 more hours, he muttered to himself. 4 more hours until his replacement arrived and he could sleep. He glanced at the array of screens before him, each displaying different data streams from deep space. His job was simple: monitor for signals, log any anomalies, and alert his superiors if something unusual appeared. In 3 years at this post, he had logged exactly 0 unusual events, until tonight. The signal came through on a frequency reserved for emergency communications from exploration vessels. At first it was just static, the kind of cosmic noise that regularly washed through this part of space. But then a pattern emerged. 3 pulses, pause, 3 pulses, pause, 3 pulses. Daniel sat up straight, coffee forgotten. That was the distress code for a Solar Coalition vessel. He quickly began running enhancement protocols trying to clean up the signal. As the computer worked, he pulled up the registry of all ships currently in deep space. The list was short. Humanity had only recently begun venturing beyond the Kuiper Belt in significant numbers. The signal strengthened, and suddenly, a voice broke through the static. A woman's voice, strained and interrupted by bursts of interference. Commander, Lisa Brooks of the scout ship Pathfinder. Anyone receiving attacked without warning, the coordinates follow. Daniel nearly fell out of his chair. The Pathfinder? That couldn't be right. The Pathfinder had been declared lost with all hands, almost 2 years ago when it failed to report back from its mission to the edge of the Sagittarius Arm. Computer, verify signal source against Pathfinder communication signature, he ordered, his hands shaking slightly as he activated the station's more powerful receiving array. Working, the computer replied. Signal matches Pathfinder communication. Signature with 94% certainty. More of the message was coming through now as Daniel fine-tuned the receiver. Discovered civilization calling themselves the Valkyrie Dominion. Claimed all space in this sector. Rejected our peaceful contact. Ship destroyed. Escaped in research shuttle. Hiding on moon of gas giant. They're coming. They know about Earth. Daniel's blood ran cold. First contact with an alien civilization should have been cause for celebration. Instead, it sounded like it had been a disaster. Computer, record full message and prepare emergency transmission to Solar Coalition Command, Priority Alpha. Priority Alpha requires director authorization, the computer reminded him. Daniel hesitated only a moment before pressing the emergency alert button on his console. Within seconds, The station's night alert sounded, and the door to his monitoring room slid open to reveal a very unhappy Director Ellen Porter, hastily dressed in her uniform. "Right, this better be important. I was actually sleeping for once," she said, her silver hair disheveled. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the Pathfinder," he said, pointing to his screens. Ellen's expression changed instantly from annoyance to disbelief. The Pathfinder was lost 2 years ago. "Listen," Daniel said, and played back the recording he had captured so far. As Lisa Brooks' voice filled the room, Ellen's face grew increasingly pale. When the message mentioned the Valkyrie and their hostility, she sat down heavily in the chair beside Daniel. "Keep recording," she ordered, "and get me a direct line to Admiral Pierce at Coalition Command." The full message continued to come through, in fragments as they listened. Commander Brooks described how the Pathfinder had encountered the Valkyrie near a star system the crew had nicknamed Beacon Point. The aliens had initially appeared to welcome contact but then demanded immediate submission to their empire. When Captain Miller had tried to explain that he had no authority to speak for all of humanity, the Valkyrie had opened fire without further discussion. The Pathfinder was not built for combat, Lisa's voice explained through bursts of static. Captain Miller ordered evacuation while he tried to buy us time. "I'm the only one who made it to a shuttle. The experimental drive malfunctioned during escape. I've been hiding here for months, using the shuttle's systems to monitor their communications." Ellen and Daniel exchanged glances as Lisa's voice grew more urgent. "They're sending a fleet to Earth, calling it a preemptive pacification. They don't tolerate potential rivals. Estimate arrival in your system within 8 standard months. Sending all data I've gathered on their technology and tactics. Please, prepare. Don't let the captain's sacrifice be for nothing." The message ended with a long string of coordinates and code, presumably the data Lisa had mentioned. The room fell silent except for the quiet beeping of the equipment. "Ma'am," Daniel finally said. "What do we do?" Ellen was already moving toward the communication station. "First, we verify this is genuine. It could be a hoax or worse, some kind of trap." But her voice lacked conviction. They both knew the Pathfinder's communication signatures couldn't easily be faked. Within an hour, the quiet monitoring station had become a hub of frantic activity. Additional staff were woken up and called in. Secure lines to Earth, Mars, and the other major colonies were established. Cryptologists began working on the data package attached to Lisa's message. Daniel found himself explaining what had happened over and over to increasingly high-ranking officials who joined the emergency video conference. Each time he told the story, it seemed less real, like something from the science fiction shows he watched during his off hours. Yet the evidence was mounting that the message was genuine. The data package contained mission logs from the Pathfinder with details only someone aboard could have known. It included sensor readings of the Valkyrie ships, tactical assessments, and even biological scans of the aliens themselves. Tall, 6-limbed beings with exoskeletons and multiple eyes. By morning, Europa Monitoring Station had been temporarily designated a Coalition Command outpost. Military personnel began arriving on emergency transports. Admiral Kevin Stone himself, head of Coalition Defense Forces, stepped off the first shuttle. Daniel, who had now been awake for nearly 30 hours, was finally relieved of duty. As he walked to his quarters, he passed groups of officers huddled in intense discussion, their faces grim. 8 months. 8. They had 8 months to prepare for an invasion by an alien force of unknown strength, with technology that had already destroyed humanity's most advanced explorer vessel. As he collapsed onto his bed, Daniel thought of Commander Lisa Brooks, alone on some distant moon, sending her desperate call into the void, hoping someone would hear it. One person, changing the fate of an entire species. One desperate call was all it took. Now humanity needed to mobilize like never before. And if they succeeded, perhaps the galaxy would indeed shake with the consequences. The large conference room on Luna Base had never been so full. Representatives from every major colony in the solar system sat around the oval table, their faces showing various degrees of disbelief, fear, and determination. Admiral Kevin Stone stood at the front of the room, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the projection of the Valkyrie ships taken from Commander Lisa Brooks's data package. The Valkyrie fleet consists of at least 30 major warships and numerous smaller vessels, he said, his deep voice cutting through the murmurs. Based on the weapons capabilities Commander Brooks observed, even their smallest ships outclass our best defensive platforms. A heavy silence fell over the room. Humanity had been united under the Solar Coalition for nearly 50 years, but they had never faced a threat like this. Their military was designed for peacekeeping among human settlements, not war with an advanced alien race. President Olivia Green, a small woman with a commanding presence, stood up. "What are our options, Admiral?" Admiral Stone's expression remained grim. "We can try to evacuate key personnel to hidden bases beyond the Kuiper Belt. We can attempt to establish diplomatic contact, or we can fight." He paused. "But I must be honest, with our current capabilities, fighting would be suicide." "So we surrender before they even arrive?" asked Sam Johnson, the representative from the Mars colonies. "Become vassals to these Valkyrie without even trying to defend ourselves?" "I didn't say that," Admiral Stone replied. "I said our current capabilities are insufficient, but we have 8 months to change that." From the back of the room, a man with wild gray hair and a rumpled suit stood up. "May I speak?" he asked. President Green nodded. "Dr. Alan Carter, everyone, head of advanced propulsion at Coalition Research." Dr. Carter walked to the front of the room, his movements energetic despite his age. "I've been reviewing the technical data from Commander Brooks' transmission. The Pathfinder was equipped with our experimental gravity manipulation drive. That's how it reached the Sagittarius arm in the first place." He tapped a few commands into the display, and the image changed to show schematics of the Pathfinder's drive system. What's interesting is that the Valkyrie seem to use a completely different technology for their faster-than-light travel. They have no defense against gravitational weapons because they've never needed them. His eyes gleamed with excitement. "We could adapt the Pathfinder's drive technology into weapons, localize gravity distortion fields that could tear their ships apart." Admiral Stone frowned. "You're talking about weaponizing experimental technology that has only been tested on one ship, a ship that, need I remind you, is now destroyed." "Not entirely destroyed." Dr. Carter smiled. "Commander Brooks escaped with the research shuttle, which contains a working miniature version of the drive. If we can reach her, we can get the shuttle. And even without it, I have all the theoretical data. We can build these weapons." "In 8 months?" President Green asked skeptically. "If we convert 40% of our industrial capacity to the project, yes," Dr. Carter replied. "It would require the biggest unified effort in human history, but it can be done." Representative Johnson scoffed. 40%? That would cripple our economy. "The Valkyrie will do worse than cripple our economy," Dr. Carter shot back. "They'll make us slaves, or worse, based on what they did to the Pathfinder crew." Admiral Stone raised his hand for quiet. "Even if we develop these weapons, Dr. Carter, we need ships to mount them on. We need trained crews. We need a strategy." "One ship survived their attack," Dr. Carter said, his voice growing passionate. "One ship limped away because they underestimated its capabilities. They're expecting primitive targets. We need to make sure that when they arrive, we're anything but primitive." At the far end of the table, a woman with dark hair streaked with silver had been listening quietly. Now she stood. This was Hannah Chen, head of the Coalition Diplomatic Corps. "While we prepare for the worst, we should also explore other options," she said. "We've made contact with 3 other alien species in the past decade. None have been particularly friendly, but they've respected our boundaries. Perhaps they know of the Valkyrie. Perhaps they would be willing to help." President Green nodded slowly. "Pursue that angle, Ambassador Chen." "Dr. Carter, begin your weapons development. Immediately, Admiral Stone, start planning our defense." The meeting continued for hours as they hammered out the details of what would come to be known as the Orbital Shield Protocol. By the time they finished, the sun was rising over the lunar landscape outside the windows. As the room emptied, Dr. Carter found himself walking beside Hannah Chen toward the transport bay. "Do you really think we can win this?" she asked quietly. Dr. Carter sighed. The odds are not good. But humans have faced long odds before. And we have one advantage the Valkyrie don't expect. What's that? We know they're coming. Thanks to Commander Brooks, we have time to prepare. And sometimes, Ambassador, time is the most valuable resource of all. Hannah nodded, but her expression remained worried. I'll be leaving for the diplomatic mission tomorrow. 3 alien species to convince that helping us is in their best interest. I don't envy you that task, Dr. Carter said with a small smile. I just have to break the laws of physics. You have to break the habits of alien cultures. Their conversation was interrupted by a young officer running toward them. Dr. Carter, Ambassador Chen, the President wants you back in the conference. Room immediately. They hurried back, finding President Green and Admiral Stone standing over a communication display. We've received another transmission from Commander Brooks, the President said without preamble. It seems we're not the only ones who heard her distress call. On the screen was a new message. The voice was still Lisa's, but she sounded different, almost hopeful. This is Commander Brooks with an update. My position has been discovered, but not by the Valkyrie. A ship from a species called the Arathi found me. They've been monitoring the Valkyrie expansion with growing concern. They've offered me sanctuary and want to discuss an alliance with humanity. They say there are other species who fear the Dominion but have been too cautious to act alone. They think my distress call might be the catalyst needed to form a united front. Sending new coordinates. Please send a diplomatic team. This could change everything. The room was silent as the message ended. Then Hannah Chen spoke, her voice filled with new determination. Well, it seems my mission just got more interesting. President Green nodded. This changes our approach. We still prepare for war, but now we also prepare for alliance. Ambassador Chen, your mission is now our highest priority. As they began planning this new diplomatic initiative, Dr. Carter couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Perhaps they weren't as alone in this fight as they had feared. One desperate call had alerted humanity to the threat. Now, it seemed, that same call had reached other ears across the stars. The galaxy was stirring, and the ripples from Lisa Brooks' message were spreading farther than anyone could have imagined. The orbital shield protocol changed life across the solar system overnight. On Earth, Mars, and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, factories stopped making consumer goods and began producing parts for weapons and ships. Schools adjusted their lessons to include emergency training. Even children learned what to do if the Valkyrie broke through their defenses. Maria Winters stood in the main production facility on Earth, watching as the assembly lines churned out components for Dr. Carter's gravity weapons. As the project lead for what was now called the Gravity Lance program, she had not slept more than 4 hours a night in weeks. Status update? She asked her assistant, a young man named Eric Boyd. Eric handed her a tablet. We're at 63% of target production. The facilities on Mars are having trouble with the power requirements for the focusing arrays. Maria frowned. Tell them to use the backup generator designs. We don't have time for perfection. She walked through the massive factory floor, nodding at the workers as she passed. Everyone understood what was at stake. There had been no need to hide the truth from the public. The Valkyrie were coming and humanity needed to be ready. Her communication device beeped. It was her husband, Colonel John Winters, calling from the military training center in Australia. How are the new recruits? She asked when his face appeared on the screen. John looked tired but determined. Getting better every day. These aren't soldiers, Maria. They're teachers, farmers, office workers. But they're learning fast. How are the weapons coming? We're behind schedule, but making progress, she admitted. Dr. Carter keeps making improvements to the design, which slows down production. That sounds like him, John said with a small smile. Always chasing perfection. We don't have time for perfection, Maria repeated her earlier words. We need weapons that work, not weapons that are perfect. Speaking of time, how much do we have left? Maria checked her watch. 5 months and 12 days according to the latest estimates. Not enough. The call was interrupted by an alert. Maria quickly said goodbye to her husband and hurried to the facility's command center. Dr. Carter was already there, his wild hair even more disheveled than usual. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "We're running out of the rare Earth elements needed for the focusing arrays. At current usage rates, we'll exhaust Earth's accessible supplies within 3 weeks." Maria felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "What about the mining operations on the Moon and Mars?" "Not enough." Dr. Carter shook his head. "We need a new source, or we'll have to scale back production significantly." Just then, a message came through on the main screen. It was from the Mars mining facility, specifically from mining engineer Paul Rodriguez. "Dr. Carter, Ms. Winters," Paul said, his face excited despite the dust covering it. "I think I found a solution to our materials problem. We've been mining all wrong. The elements we need are concentrated in the old volcanic regions of Mars, not the areas we've been focusing on. With a simple adjustment to our extraction methods, we can triple our yield." Dr. Carter's eyes widened. "Triple? Are you certain?" "I've run the tests myself," Paul confirmed. "And there's more. The higher concentration means we can simplify the refining process. We can cut production time for the focusing arrays in half." Maria felt hope surge within her. "Send us everything you have, Mr. Rodriguez, and well done." After the call ended, Dr. Carter turned to Maria with a rare smile. "That young man just gave us a fighting chance." Across the solar system, similar breakthroughs were happening as humanity poured all its resources and creativity into the defense effort. On Saturn's moon Titan, researchers developed new shield technology based on the principles in Lisa Brooks's data. In the asteroid belt, mining ships converted to military vessels practiced battle maneuvers under the guidance of veteran space pilots. But not everyone believed in the orbital shield protocol. A small but vocal minority insisted the alien threat was exaggerated or even fabricated to consolidate power in the Solar Coalition government. They called themselves truth seekers and held protests outside military facilities. Some went further. 3 months into the mobilization, Maria was awakened in the middle of the night by an emergency alert. Someone had sabotaged the main power grid for the European production facility. The backup systems had prevented a complete shutdown, but valuable time and materials were lost. The next day, she met with Security Chief Alex Ross. "Do we know who did it?" she asked. Alex nodded grimly. "A group calling themselves Freedom from Fear. They believe we're wasting resources on a made-up threat." "Made up?" Maria couldn't keep the anger from her voice. "We have the Pathfinder's data. We have Commander Brooks' testimony. What more proof do they need?" "Some people won't believe anything until they see it with their own eyes," Alex said. "Unfortunately, by then it will be too late." Despite these setbacks, the mobilization continued. Dr. Carter's gravity weapons moved from theory to reality. The first successful test of a small-scale gravity lance left a test asteroid shattered into thousands of pieces. The video of this test was shared across all colonies, boosting morale and silencing many critics. 4 months after the initial distress call, Ambassador Chen returned from her diplomatic mission with representatives from 3 alien species: the Arathi, the Novari, and the Lintari. They brought their own technologies and knowledge of the Valkyrie Dominion. The Arathi, tall beings with 4 arms and iridescent skin, had been observing the Valkyrie for centuries. The Novari, small but incredibly intelligent creatures that communicated through color patterns on their skin, had lost colonies to Valkyrie expansion. The Lintari, insect-like beings with advanced bioengineering skills, had been hiding from the Dominion for generations. President Green welcomed them in a historic ceremony, broadcast throughout human space. "Today marks a new chapter in our history," she said. "We face a common threat, and we will stand together against it. The Valkyrie believe they can conquer us one by one. They are wrong." With the help of their new allies, humanity's preparations accelerated. Arathi shield technology was integrated into human ships. Novari tactical systems improved their targeting capabilities. Lintari medicines enhanced the endurance of human soldiers. As the estimated arrival date of the Valkyrie fleet grew closer, Maria found herself working alongside beings she could never have imagined meeting just months ago. In the main production facility, Arathi engineers worked with human technicians to assemble the final components of the largest gravity lance yet constructed. "Will it be enough?" she asked Dr. Carter as they watched the work progress. The old scientist looked at her with tired but determined eyes. "It has to be. We've done more in these past months than I thought possible. Humanity has truly mobilized in a way I've never seen before." Maria nodded, thinking of her husband training troops on the other side of the world, of Paul Rodriguez revolutionizing mining techniques on Mars, of Daniel Wright, who first received the distress call, and of Lisa Brooks, whose desperate message had started it all. One call had changed everything. But the real test was still to come. The Valkyrie were on their way, and despite all their preparations, the outcome remained uncertain. The greatest challenge in human history was about to begin. The early warning system near Pluto detected the Valkyrie fleet 3 weeks before their expected arrival. Scanners showed over 40 warships emerging from what the Arathi called fold space, the Valkyrie method of faster-than-light travel. Leading this armada was an enormous vessel twice the size of anything humans had ever built. Admiral Kevin Stone stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship Defender, watching the tactical display with a grim expression. Beside him, tactical, Officer Grace Williams studied the incoming data. "They're moving faster than we predicted," she said quietly. "They'll reach Neptune's orbit in 14 hours. Admiral Stone nodded. "Alert all outer system defense groups. It's time to see if all our preparations were enough." Messages flashed across the solar system. Defense platforms around Neptune powered up their newly installed gravity weapons. Ships moved into position, their crews tense but ready after months of training. On the Valkyrie command ship, War Prince Nexor received the first scans of the solar system with surprise, where his intelligence had suggested a primitive civilization. With minimal space defenses, he instead found a fully mobilized system. Defense platforms orbited the outer planets. Fleets of warships waited in formation. Energy signatures indicated weapons of unexpected sophistication. "It seems our prey has teeth," he remarked to his second-in-command. "How interesting." The Valkyrie adjusted their approach, becoming more cautious. Rather than charging directly toward Earth as expected, they split their forces, sending scout ships ahead to test the human defenses. Near Neptune, Commander Andy Peters received orders to engage the approaching scouts. His small fleet of 10 ships had been patrolling this sector for months, running drills and simulations. Now it was time for the real thing. "All ships, move to attack Formation Delta," he ordered. "Remember your training. These aren't simulations anymore." The human ships accelerated toward the Valkyrie scouts. The alien vessels were sleek and predatory, their hulls covered in what looked like overlapping scales of dark metal. They moved with a fluid grace that human ships couldn't match. But the humans had their own advantages. Using the gravity of Neptune itself, they slingshot their vessels at incredible speeds, approaching the Valkyrie from unexpected angles. The first gravity lance fired, its beam invisible, but its effects immediately apparent. Space itself seemed to warp around one of the Valkyrie scouts, crushing it as though it were caught in an invisible fist. The battle was joined. Valkyrie energy weapons lashed out, destroying 2 human ships instantly. But the remaining human vessels continued their attack, their tactics confusing the Valkyrie, who were used to enemies that fled rather than fought. On the Defender, now positioned near Saturn, Admiral Stone watched the data coming in from the Neptune engagement. "The gravity lances work," he said with relief. "But the Valkyrie ships are tough. We're taking heavy losses." Grace Williams pointed to a new alert on the display. "Sir, the main Valkyrie fleet is changing course. They're moving toward Jupiter." Stone frowned. Jupiter was where they had stationed their largest contingent of ships and platforms, the main line of defense before Earth. "They're testing us, probing for weaknesses." "Or they detected our largest weapon installations," Grace suggested. "The Arathi warned us that Valkyrie sensors were highly advanced." Admiral Stone made a quick decision. "Order the Jupiter Defense Group to pull back. Make it look like they're retreating to protect Earth." Meanwhile, have the Saturn forces move into position behind the Valkyrie fleet. His plan was risky. By appearing to abandon Jupiter, he hoped to lure the Valkyrie into a trap. If they committed their forces to pursuing what they thought was a retreating enemy, the Saturn group could hit them from behind. War Prince Nexor observed the human ships pulling away from Jupiter with satisfaction. They run, as all inferior species do when faced with the might of the Dominion. Pursue them. We will crush their main fleet before moving on to their homeworld. The Valkyrie fleet accelerated after the retreating human ships, exactly as Admiral Stone had hoped. But Nexor was no fool. He left a significant force to guard his rear, suspecting a trap. The battle that followed was unlike anything humanity had experienced. Valkyrie weapons tore through shields that would have withstood any human attack. But the gravity weapons developed by Dr. Carter proved effective, creating localized distortions that the Valkyrie ships could not defend against. The cost was high. Ship after ship reported critical damage. Defense platforms went silent. But the human forces fought with desperate courage, knowing what was at stake. In the midst of the chaos, a small, fast ship slipped away from the main battle. On board were Lieutenant Ben Cooper, communications specialist Daniel Wright, and representatives from each of the alien allies. Their mission was crucial, to reach the coordinates Lisa Brooks had provided, where she waited with information that might turn the tide. Their ship, the Swift, was equipped with a miniaturized version of the Pathfinder's experimental drive. It was their best hope of reaching the distant location and returning in time to make a difference. "Are you sure this thing works?" Daniel asked nervously as the drive powered up. Ben nodded, though he looked far from confident. "The engineers said it has a 70% chance of success. And the other 30%? Asked Kyril, the Arathi representative. "Better not to think about that," Ben replied with a grim smile. The drive activated and the small ship vanished from normal space, leaving the battle behind. Back at Saturn, the trap was sprung. The hidden human forces emerged from the cover of the planet's rings, firing their gravity weapons at the exposed flank of the Valkyrie fleet. At the same time, the ships that had appeared to retreat from Jupiter turned and attacked. For a moment, it seemed the plan had worked perfectly. 3 Valkyrie capital ships were destroyed in the initial assault, but then Nexor's rear guard moved into action, and the tide began to turn again. On the bridge of the Defender, now in the thick of the battle, Admiral Stone received damage reports from all sides. "Our shields are failing," reported the engineering officer. "One more direct hit and we're done." Grace Williams looked up from her tactical display. "Sir, the Saturn Defense Group is being overrun. Commander Frank Miller reports they can't hold much longer." Admiral Stone's face was grim, but determined. "Tell Commander Miller to hold as long as he can. Every minute he buys us is another minute, for Earth's final defenses to prepare." Near Saturn, Commander Frank Miller received the order with a nod. His squadron was down to 4 ships, all damaged, facing a Valkyrie force 10 times their size. But they had positioned themselves in Saturn's rings using the ice and rock debris for partial cover. "We'll hold," he said simply to his crew. "As long as we can." As the battle raged across the outer solar system, humanity fought with everything they had. The Valkyrie advance slowed, but did not stop. One by one, the outer defenses fell. The path to Earth was opening. Everything now depended on the Swift and its mission to find Lisa Brooks. If Ben Cooper and his team failed, the sacrifices being made across the solar system might all be in vain. The greatest battle in human history continued, hanging in the balance between hope and despair. The Swift emerged from fold space with a violent shudder that nearly tore the small ship apart. Warning lights flashed across the control panels as Ben Cooper fought to stabilize their course. "Everyone alive?" he called out once the ship stopped. Shaking, Daniel Wright groaned from his seat. "Barely. Did we make it to the right place?" Kyril, the Arathi representative, checked the navigation systems. "We are at the coordinates provided by Commander Brooks. This is the 3rd moon of a gas giant in a system the Arathi call Viridian. The surface of the moon below them was barren and cratered, with no obvious signs of life or technology. Ben initiated a scan for human life signs. "There," he said after a moment. "I'm picking up a signal. It's faint, but it matches coalition emergency beacons." They landed the Swift near the signal source, a small crater partially covered by an overhanging rock formation. As they exited the ship in their environmental suits, they saw no immediate sign of Commander Brooks or her shuttle. "The signal is coming from inside that cave formation," Daniel said, pointing to a dark opening in the crater wall. They approached cautiously, weapons ready. The Valkyrie weren't supposed to know about this location, but after 2 years, anything could have happened. "Hello?" Ben called out over the suit's external speakers as they entered the cave. "Commander Brooks? This is Lieutenant Ben Cooper of the Solar Coalition." A figure stepped out from behind a rock formation, pointing a standard-issue Coalition sidearm at them. She was thin, her face gaunt beneath her helmet, but her eyes were clear and determined. "Lieutenant," she said, lowering her weapon, "you have no idea how good it is to see human faces again." Lisa Brooks was alive, and she wasn't alone. Behind her emerged representatives from 7 different alien species, each watching the newcomers with expressions ranging from hope to suspicion. "The Arathi found me 8 months ago," Lisa explained once they were inside her makeshift base, the research shuttle from the Pathfinder, hidden deep in the cave. "Word of my distress call spread. Others came. We've been planning, waiting for someone from Earth to arrive." The alien being closest to Lisa stepped forward, tall and ethereal, with skin that seemed to shimmer with its own light. It introduced itself in a melodious voice that somehow translated directly in their minds. "I am Zelthar of the Luminar," it said. "My people have avoided the Valkyrie for millennia, but we have studied them from afar. We know their weakness." Ben felt hope surge within him. "What weakness? We're in the middle of a full-scale invasion. Our forces are being pushed back across the solar system." Zelthar gestured to a holographic display in the center of the shuttle. "The Valkyrie maintain their empire through absolute control. Their command structure is linked through quantum-entangled communication nodes." The display showed a glowing network connecting Valkyrie ships. These nodes allow instant communication across any distance, but they also create a vulnerability. Lisa continued, "If we can disrupt the primary node, the one on the War Prince's command ship, it will cause a cascade failure through their entire fleet. Their ships will be thrown into confusion, unable to coordinate." "That's why we've been waiting here," said another alien, a reptilian being with iridescent scales. "None of us alone had the technology to exploit this weakness, but together, with the human gravity weapons." Daniel caught on immediately. The gravity distortion could disrupt the quantum entanglement. Kiral nodded. "Precisely. But it would require getting close to the War Prince's ship." "Very close." Ben checked the Swift's chronometer. "We need to move fast. How soon can we leave?" "My shuttle can't make the journey back," Lisa said. "The drive is failing. We'll have to use your ship." They worked quickly, transferring essential equipment and data from the research shuttle to the Swift. The alien representatives brought their own technologies, devices that looked strange to human eyes but that Zelthar assured them would be crucial to their plan. Within hours, they were ready to depart. The Swift, now crowded with beings from 8 different species, lifted off from the barren moon. "I hope we're not too late," Lisa said quietly to Ben as they prepared to activate the full drive. Back in the solar system, the situation had grown desperate. The Valkyrie fleet had broken through the defenses at Jupiter and Saturn. Over 60% of the human forces had been destroyed or disabled. The remaining ships had fallen back to Earth's orbit for a final stand. On the Defender, now heavily damaged, Admiral Stone received the worst possible news. "The Valkyrie command ship has changed course," Grace Williams reported. "It's heading directly for Earth, bypassing our remaining defense groups." This was what they had feared most, that Nexor would target Earth itself rather than wasting more resources on the human fleet. Dr. Carter, who had joined the Defender's crew to oversee the deployment of the gravity weapons, shook his head. If they reach bombardment range of Earth, he didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew what would happen. Just then, a communications officer called out, "Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's the Swift." Ben Cooper's face appeared on the main screen. "Admiral, we've found Commander Brooks and made contact with 7 new alien species. We have a plan to disable the Valkyrie fleet, but we need to get close to Nexor's command ship." Hope flickered across Admiral Stone's tired face. "Lieutenant, that ship is heading for Earth with half the Valkyrie fleet as escort. Getting close would be suicide." "Not if you create a diversion," Ben replied. "We've modified our gravity weapon, based on information from our new allies. One shot at the right spot will cause a cascade failure through their entire command network." Admiral Stone looked at Dr. Carter, who nodded slowly. "Theoretically possible. If what they're saying about quantum entangled communication is true, it was a desperate gamble, but they had no better options." Admiral Stone ordered the remaining human forces to launch an all-out attack on the Valkyrie fleet, concentrating their fire to create an opening for the Swift. The final battle for Earth began. Human ships threw themselves at the Valkyrie, absorbing devastating hits to draw fire away from the small, fast ship racing toward the massive command vessel. On the Swift, Lisa Brooks watched the battle unfold with a mixture of hope and dread. "I never thought I'd see Earth again," she said softly. Ben guided the ship through the chaos, dodging Valkyrie fire. "You did more than see it again, Commander. You saved it. Your call brought us all together." They reached firing position. Zelthar and Dr. Carter's team had pinpointed the location of the main communication node on Nexor's ship. Daniel activated the modified gravity weapon, channeling power from the ship's engines. "We'll only get one shot at this," he warned. Ben nodded. "Make it count." The gravity beam fired, invisible but incredibly powerful. It struck the Valkyrie command ship precisely on target. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like a wave spreading outward, the lights on the massive vessel began to flicker and die. The effect spread to nearby ships, then to those further away. War Prince Nexor felt his connection to the fleet sever in an instant. For the first time in his long career of conquest, he knew confusion and fear. Without the command network, his perfectly coordinated armada became a collection of individual ships unable to communicate or coordinate their actions. Admiral Stone watched in amazement as the Valkyrie attack faltered. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation began to drift apart. Some continued firing, but their coordination was gone. "All ships, press the advantage," he ordered. The human forces, joined by vessels from their alien allies, surged forward. What had seemed like certain defeat transformed into an unexpected opportunity. On Nexor's command ship, the War Prince made a final decision. Rather than face defeat, he ordered his vessel to charge directly at Earth. Even without his fleet, he could still complete part of his mission. But the Swift and a squadron of human ships intercepted the command vessel. Ben, Lisa, and their alien allies led a boarding party onto the massive ship. The fighting was intense, but with the internal systems in chaos, they fought their way to the bridge. Nexor faced them with the dignity of a predator at bay. "You have won a battle, humans, but the Dominion spans 1,000 worlds. Others will come." "Let them come," Lisa replied. "They'll find not just humanity waiting for them, but a united galaxy." The news of the Valkyrie defeat spread across the stars. The empire that had seemed unstoppable had been halted by an unlikely alliance sparked by one desperate call for help. In the months that followed, the Galactic Concordat was formally established, a mutual defense pact between humanity and 14 alien species. Lisa Brooks became humanity's first ambassador to this new alliance, while Daniel Wright, whose vigilance had first received her message, headed a new communication network designed to connect all member worlds. The Valkyrie threat remained, but they now faced not isolated worlds ripe for conquest, but a united front of diverse species determined to defend their freedom. One desperate call had changed everything. Humanity had mobilized as never before, and in doing so, had helped shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The stars would never be the same again.